Hello, my name is Brian Dickinson. I'm a history teacher and sociology teacher down in West Sussex. I'm also a private tutor from my own tutor Crawley in Crawley. That's my website as well. This topic is going to be on the 12-mark questions to do with your GCSE in Sociology with AQA. Now, the 12 markers do take a little bit more detail and information to go through, which is why it's a separate topic, really, and they are vitally important, which I'll explain to you why that is in a minute. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen with you, so therefore I can go through with you what we're going to be doing today. So this is, you have to answer all 12-mark questions on a paper. Up until last year, before last year, you had to answer just half of them. You got an option of which one to choose. You have to do all of them now. Okay, there are 4 12-mark questions on each paper. 2 for education, 2 for families, 2 for crime, 2 for social stratification. Okay, the 12-mark questions account for 48% of your total grade. So because there's 4 on each paper, each paper is out of 100. So 4 times 12 is 48. So it's nearly half your grade. If you do very, very well on this, okay, it's a massive amount of points to pick up. If you're looking at a grade 5 or above, you really do need to hammer these and get these 12 markers done well. 12-mark questions are looking at how well you understand the main theories in each topic. Okay, it gives you an opportunity to delve into it a little bit more detail. So you're expected to write for around about 12 to 15 minutes per question, non-stop that is, and a bit of rereading maybe. So, you know, you could write easily 2 pages on this if you know it well. You need to show you understand a main theory and its limitations with the use of other theories. So functionalists, and then counter it with Marxism, feminism, and the other way around, okay? Each 12 marker starts with how far do sociologists agree? Sociologists never agree. Okay, so whatever you get is, and I'll come on to this wording in a minute, is there's always disagreement. This is one of the problems with sociology. One of my students once said, so what's the correct answer? What's the correct theory? There isn't one. It's what you believe to a large extent and how you believe it, really. So don't get too hung up on, you know, should I say a Marxist is better than a functionalist, or a functionalist is better than a Marxist or a feminist? Doesn't matter. Examiners don't care what you believe to a large extent. It's what they think. What they want to know is how do you come to what you're saying. To get over 6 points, so get over half marks on each one, you need to show you understand alternative theories. So if you only sort of like say one theory, if you only go through the Marxist theory, or only go through the functionist theory or something, then you're only going to get up to about half marks, really. To get over half marks, you've got to show that you understand another theory or, you know, a little bit more about it. To get over 10 points, you must come up with your own judgment on how far do sociologists agree. In other words, you need to explain whether most sociologists agree with a statement or just a few, and if not, or not very many, and why they would not agree. Don't you say they don't agree, or 50% don't agree on this. Who's the 50%? Why don't they agree on it? What's wrong with the theory? To get over 10 marks, you also have to say why some sociologists disagree with the statement. This is usually because they adhere to a different theory, such as Marxism or feminism or functionalism. Okay, so in other words, most sociologists don't agree with this because most sociologists follow the Marxist version of something. Okay, where it's families or whatever. It's the evaluation that really does get you. You've got to understand each theory, what's so good about it, what's not so good about it, and how the other theorists challenge. Okay, so if you know about functionalism on the family, then you've got to say, well, I know what functionists say, but I also know it's challenged by the feminists in this way, it's challenged by Marxism in this way. Okay, and that will help you. So let's go through our exam paper. Hopefully you're seeing that. So the first question on paper 1, which we're looking at, this is in last year's paper. This is 2019. beg your pardon, I think it was, oh, it's one, yeah. So, discuss how far sociologists would agree that families are the main agent of socialization. So you've got to understand what socialization is. It is not socializing, okay? It's about how people learn to behave the way they do in society, and how many sociologists agree that families are the main agents of that. Who says that? Which type of sociologists say that? It's functionalism. So you really do have to go through and know your functionists, okay? Talcott Parsons is the main one, obviously. You've got to go through what Talcott Parsons says, and a little bit about his theories, okay? And what he says about how socialization works and how a family works in that respect. You could then counter it to get more than 6 points with what feminists say and what Marxists say, okay? So the alternative views of what Marxists and feminists say, and the fact that Marxists probably say that the main agency, or one of the main agents of socialization, could be the education system. Okay, Marxists do realise that the family is important. They do know that. They don't say it's not important. They do agree that it is important, but they might put more emphasis on other agencies as well, like education and the media and things like that. Okay, and you might want to then come up with some of the work of, and if you could throw in what other functionists say, this is what examiners do like to see this. If I was reading this from a student, and they said that, and they mentioned functionists would say the main agency of socialization in the family is the family, and then they mentioned Talcott Parsons or Murdoch, I think, oh, good, they know what they're talking about. Great, you mentioned it. And then they might say, well, Marxists will disagree and say that while it's important, actually the Marxists will say that education is really important. Okay, right, very good, excellent. And then we'll say, because of the work like Bowles and Gintis studying education system, or Paul Willis, brilliant, great, excellent. You really do understand it well. Okay, so it's little tips like that, little things like that examiners like to see, that you do understand. And also, what type of socialization do feminists say is really important, does the family do? Okay, and one of the things is with feminists that they say that in the family, not only do we learn how to eat, sleep and talk and sit down and manners and all the rest of it, which they do agree with, but also what feminists say is that you learn your gender socialization. You learn to behave like a boy or a girl or a man or a woman because what we see from other people, and the fact that your parents name you in a certain way, they dress you in a certain way, they have your hair cut in a certain way, they give you toys to play with in a certain way, that socializes you as a boy or a girl. It's not natural that you grow up wanting to play with cars or play with dolls or whatever. It's because that's what you're given as a very early age, and that's how you're spoken to and how you're treated. So you could also then mention, as I said, the work of people like Anne Oakley as well on that. One thing that I would suggest that you do is when you sum up, if you were to go through all of those, if you go through functionists with Parsons, and you go through Bowles and Gintis, maybe education system for Marxists, and Oakley for feminists, you'll probably get up to 10 marks. To get over 10, and I can tell you now, not many people do get over 10 marks. When I marked this last year, not many people got 10 marks or more. It's to say what you think. So in other words, you might say, how far does sociologists agree? A lot of sociologists wouldn't agree that it's the main agent of socialization, because Marxists believe it's the education system, feminists believe it is really important, but you also learn about, so you're kind of summing up. And you might say, how important do you believe it is? It's trying to give your own judgment, okay? If you don't address that bit, you won't get more than 10. It is the most difficult part, or maybe even trying to criticise. And what the chief examiners quite often say when they do this is that not many people, it's the evaluation. How good is the theory? Is the Marxist theory? How good is the functions theory? Okay, and that's what people really do fall down on. Moving on, you've got the second one. Shows you how much you can write. And if you want extra papers, don't worry about it. I know I said in my last lesson that a lot of these papers are scanned in. If you've got extra papers, don't worry, they get scanned in as well. Next one is discuss how far sociologists would agree that marriage is still important in Britain today. Now, this is saying, is marriage still important? Okay, now, probably in most of your lessons, what you've probably done is gone through the fact that marriage is in decline. That is not as many people getting married anymore. Okay, and you might talk about traditional marriage is in decline, that type of thing, because functions look at traditional and they recognise that traditional marriage is heterosexual marriage, and that's in decline. So therefore, ergo, and a lot of functions will say that marriage is in decline. It's not as important in Britain today. And you might look at statistically, compared with say 50 years ago, not as many people get married as they did 50 years ago. So therefore, people don't see it as important. However, it is still important. And most sociologists actually would say it is important. Okay. And the reasons for it, and even though statistically it might look it's in decline, a lot of people still go through marriage. They still get involved in some marriage at some stage in their lives. They might end up getting divorced, okay, but they still end up quite often getting married. And people get remarried, even though they might get divorced, they quite often remarry again. It doesn't put them off. It's still seen as an ideal thing. You've only got to look at soap operas. Quite a lot of people in soap operas are married. Look at the fuss made over royal weddings. Okay, it's still seen as an ideal. People thought marriage wasn't, it's just a trivial thing, people can't be bothered with it anymore. Why do millions of people tune in to watch royal weddings? Because it's like a fairy tale, princess and Prince Charming getting married, that type of thing. If you look at Harry and Meghan got married a couple of years ago. The amount of coverage over that was colossal because people like to see a wedding. People still go to weddings. Okay, they don't think it's just a useless, pointless ceremony. People do go through that. Okay, it still continues to be important. It's still a very popular way of doing it. And also, one other way that you can challenge this is what a lot of Marxists will point out, how important marriage is to people, is that same-sex marriages are quite popular. If it was meaningless to a lot of people, why is it that the gay people still do it as well? That they actually want to get married. People still want to go through that ideal of being married to somebody. Okay, so it's still seen as vitally important. Some people also, you might want to even look at an alternative view in the fact that arranged marriages are still quite thought of. Less so, maybe, but in some cultures, arranged marriages are still used as well. Be aware when you talk about arranged marriages that sometimes some people quite like arranged marriages. That is culturally sensitive as well, and that it's not forced. It's not the difference between arranged marriage and forced marriages. Some cultures might force a young girl to get married to somebody they don't know, but sometimes it might be arranged that the families get involved in getting people together. They're not forcing them to get married, but they kind of arrange it all for them, and they might kind of it's more culturally acceptable in some areas. Okay, and also, why is it that one of the things that an examiner will be looking for is why is marriage in decline statistically? So you're looking at things like, the law. It's now more legally easier to get a divorce than it used to be. That it's less stigma involved in not getting married, whereas people years ago got married to live together. Now they don't. They actually live together and then still get married. So even though cohabitation has gone up, people usually live together before they get married. Okay, there are a few people, admittedly, who live together for all their lives, but they generally cohabitation has gone up before people get married, because it's now more socially acceptable that that's what you would do. Very few people I've ever come across who first time they ever get married, first time I ever lived with somebody is when they get married. They normally live together beforehand. Secularization. People don't go to church so much anymore, so they don't see a marriage as in the vows of till us do part. They don't see us getting married in the eyes of before the eyes of God, before God. So therefore, they will not be religious about it as well. So look at those, explain those alternatives as well. If you want to have a go at some of these 12 markers, and when I do this in lessons, my year 11s, when I go through the year 11s, I do 12 markers almost to death. Okay, I do a lot of work on 12 mark questions because I think it's so important. If you are looking at grade 5 or above, you should really concentrate on your 12 markers. Okay, they are really important. Practice. If you go onto the AQA website, you can get, or whatever examples you're with, if you're not with AQA, you can get past papers quite readily. There's lots out there. If you use textbooks, quite often they'll have 12 markers in there and how to use them. If you're working from home and your teachers aren't marking your work, or you're not in contact with your teachers that much at the moment, if you want to get in touch with Satchel or show my homework and want to send them to me, I'm quite happy to look through and review, talk them over with you, or even go over what makes a good answer, with examples maybe as well. Another topic that would take a lot longer to do, unfortunately. So hopefully you've learned a little bit more on that and what 12 markers are like and how important they are. If you're looking at getting top marks in this, I would suggest you do your 12 markers first. Okay, spend some time on it, because if you run out of time on the small questions, not so bad. If you run out of time on the 12 markers, you're going to lose marks. Okay, so really make sure you practice writing for 15 minutes each time, and say, right, I'm going to do my 12 markers for 15 minutes, and I'm going to. It's been able to explain things very quickly in concise ways, not waffle, and make sure you tie it up at the end. Okay, a little bit at the end. So most sociologists would say this, or most sociologists would say the opposite, because, and who would say that and why they would say things. Okay, so don't just say, here's a theory, here's the alternative. Okay, tie up at the end, summarize what you think is the most important theory or most important part of that topic, of that question. Okay, well, I'm going to end it there. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something, and see you next time. Goodbye.